I never expected my wedding to turn into a goddamn war. Not a real war, obviously, no blood, no bullets, but the kind that leaves you exhausted, blindsided, wondering how the people who are supposed to love you the most could be the ones who hurt you worst. It started with my brother, Trevor. We've never been close. Even as kids, there was always this weird, unspoken competition between us, except I was never the one competing. It was all him. If I got a new pair of sneakers, Trevor suddenly had to have the exact same ones, but better. If I brought home a good grade, he had to rub it in my face when he got a higher score. It never mattered what I did, Trevor's entire existence revolved around proving he was superior. By the time we were teenagers, I was just tired. I stopped engaging. Ignored the jabs, the smug little smirks, the way he'd go out of his way to make me feel like shit just because he could. When I left for college, I barely looked back. And when we saw each other at family gatherings, we were civil, but that was it. No heart-to-hearts, no real conversations. Just two guys with the same last name who happened to exist in the same room. So when I planned my wedding, it wasn't even a question. Trevor wasn't invited. Not out of spite. Not because I wanted to make a statement. Just because we weren't friends. Why the hell would I invite someone who barely spoke to me, let alone supported me? I figured he'd roll his eyes, maybe make some snide remark to our parents, and move on. I never expected him to go nuclear. A week before my wedding, my cousin showed me an invitation. It was for Trevor's 28th birthday party, the night before my wedding. And not just any birthday party. Trevor had gone all out, rented a huge venue, booked a live band, even hired a stand-up comedian. Full catering, open bar, the whole 9 yards. It was insane. I mean, who throws a thousands of dollars party for their 28th birthday? The answer was obvious. Someone who wasn't celebrating at all, someone making a statement. And the kicker? The party was in San Diego. My wedding? A full 8 hours away in Las Vegas. It didn't take a genius to see what was happening. He wanted to make our family choose. And my parents? Yeah, they chose. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe Trevor just wanted a big party. Maybe he really didn't mean to sabotage my wedding. But deep down, I knew better. So I called my parents that night, already bracing for the worst. Hey, I started, keeping my voice even. Did you see Trevor's party invitation? There was a pause. Then my mom sighed. Ethan, don't start. Don't start what? My patience was already slipping. I just want to know if you're coming to my wedding or not. Of course we want to, honey, she said, voice syrupy sweet. But, well, you did hurt Trevor's feelings. You didn't invite him. I let out a dry laugh. So this is my fault? Dad cut in, voice clipped. Actions have consequences, Ethan. You excluded your own brother. He has every right to be upset. He planned this to be spiteful, I snapped. And you know it. Well, maybe if you'd invited him, this wouldn't be happening, Mom said, like that was the most logical, reasonable thing in the world. I clenched my jaw. So you're really choosing his party over my wedding? Ethan, Mom sighed again, like I was exhausting her. It's not about choosing. We just don't want to hurt Trevor's feelings. I laughed short, sharp, bitter. But mine don't matter, right? Silence. And that told me everything I needed to know. I exhaled through my nose, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Fine. Go to his party. But if you do, don't bother coming to my wedding. Mom let out a tiny, shocked gasp. Ethan. I hung up. I stared at the phone, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. They wouldn't really go, would they? I tried to shake it off, focusing on last-minute wedding preparations. But a part of me, the part that had spent my entire life being second to Trevor, knew. They weren't coming. And I was right. The morning before we left for Vegas, I sent a car to pick up my parents. It came back empty. The driver said he rang the bell, called their phones, even waited outside for 20 minutes. No answer. I called. No response. I texted. Nothing. That night, while Trevor was basking in the glow of his petty little party, I accepted the truth. My parents weren't coming. It stung. Badly. But I had something better. I had my real family. Every single other person, cousins, aunts, uncles, my closest friends, all chose to be at my wedding. Even my grandmother, who's in her late 70s, made the 8-hour trip to be there. So when I stood at that altar, looking into Mia's eyes, I felt nothing but joy. For the first time, I let go of the hope that my parents would ever truly be there for me. And honestly, it felt like a weight off my chest. But of course, this wasn't over. Because that night, after the reception, After the laughter and the speeches and the dancing, my parents called. And I picked up. Because I needed to hear what excuse they had. And oh, did they have an excuse? One that made my blood boil. I stepped outside the reception hall, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might snap in half. The music and laughter from inside faded as I walked toward the quiet of the parking lot. My heart was pounding in my ears, the adrenaline from the day still coursing through me. I swiped to answer. Ethan, Mom's voice came through, soft, almost hesitant. We just wanted to call and congratulate you on your wedding. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, now you want to acknowledge it? A pause. Then a sigh. Honey, don't be like that. Like what? My voice was rising. Like someone whose own parents didn't bother showing up to the biggest day of his life? Dad cut in, his tone flat. You told us not to come. I clenched my jaw. I told you that if you chose Trevor's party over my wedding, you shouldn't bother showing up. And you did. So don't act like this is my fault. There was a beat of silence. Then Mom's voice, softer now, almost pitiful. We just didn't think it would be such a big deal. I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply through my nose. Not a big deal? I repeated, my voice shaking. It's my wedding. You think this is something I can just do over? That it didn't matter. Of course it mattered, she said quickly. We thought you'd understand. Trevor was hurt, Ethan. He felt excluded. You could have avoided all of this if you just invited him. I let out a hollow laugh. So I should have invited someone who's treated me like shit my whole life? Someone who deliberately tried to sabotage my wedding? That's what you're saying. Dad scoffed. Oh, come on. He just wanted to celebrate his birthday. Bullshit, I snapped. You and I both know he planned that party specifically to fuck with me. And instead of calling him out, instead of telling him he was being ridiculous, you funded it. Silence. And there it was. You paid for it, didn't you? I said, my voice eerily calm now. Trevor couldn't afford a party like that on his own. He barely makes enough to cover his own rent. So tell me, how much did you give him? Mom made a strangled noise. Who told you that? I laughed, shaking my head. So you're not even gonna deny it? Dad exhaled sharply, like I was the one being difficult. It's not like that. Then how is it? I shot back. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you chose to help Trevor throw a goddamn tantrum instead of coming to your own son's wedding. You're being dramatic, Dad muttered. That was it. The final straw. I laughed, a short, humorless sound that made my own chest ache. You know what? I don't even care anymore. You made your choice. Live with it. Mom's voice broke. Ethan, please. I hung up. The moment I did, I felt a strange sense of relief. Like I had finally let go of something I'd been holding onto for years. I turned, exhaling slowly, and nearly jumped when I saw Mia standing a few feet away. She was watching me, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. You okay? I swallowed hard. They're unbelievable. Mia took a step closer, reaching for my hand. What did they say? I let out a shaky breath. That Trevor was hurt, that I should have invited him, that I was being dramatic. Oh, and apparently, missing our wedding wasn't a big deal. Her jaw clenched. Are you kidding me? Nope. I forced out a dry chuckle. Apparently, Trevor turning 28 is more important than us getting married. Mia's eyes darkened with anger. Ethan. I don't even have words. I shook my head, squeezing her hand. I'm done. I don't care anymore. And I meant it. At least, I thought I did. But then, a few days later, I got an email. Not just from my parents. From Trevor. From relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I thought it was spam. My inbox was flooded, subject lines like, we need to talk, and Ethan, this is serious. I hesitated before opening one. Ethan, I hope you're happy. You won. You got your perfect wedding while I lost everything. Since no one will even speak to me anymore, I've been forced to take out another loan just to survive. I can't afford rent. I can't afford my car payments. I have nothing. And it's all because of you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay me back for what I lost. All of it. $14,738. I don't care how you get it. If you don't, I will make sure everyone knows the truth about you. You think you've won, but I promise you, this isn't over. Trevor. I stared at the screen, barely able to process what I was reading. Then I burst out laughing. Just a full, exhausted, disbelieving laugh, because at this point, what else could I even do? Mia, sitting beside me on the couch, frowned. What? I turned the laptop toward her. Read this. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her expression morphed from confusion to fury. Oh my God. I rubbed my temples. He really thinks I'm going to pay him back? She scoffed. This is blackmail. Actual blackmail. I exhaled, shaking my head. And for what? Because he threw a tantrum and wasted 14 grand on a party no one wanted to go to? Mia's expression hardened. Ethan, you need to end this. And for the first time, I truly believed it. I was done playing nice. Trevor wanted to burn my life down? Fine. I'd make damn sure he got caught in the flames. For the first time in my life, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called a lawyer. Mia sat beside me at the kitchen table, her hand gripping mine tightly as we went over every disgusting, unhinged email Trevor had sent me. My parents' messages were bad enough, full of guilt-tripping, gaslighting, and the usual, we're your parents, you need to respect us, bullshit. But Trevor's? His were something else entirely. Threats, accusations, blackmail, and the number, $14, $738, burned in my brain like a goddamn joke. Legally speaking, this is harassment, the lawyer, Ms. Dawson, said as she scrolled through the emails. The threats, the financial demands, even the attempt at blackmail, there's enough here to pursue a restraining order. I swallowed. The words restraining order felt heavy, like something you got against a stalker, not your own goddamn brother. But then I thought about Trevor. The way he'd shown up at my house at 4 a.m. The way he spat at my feet when I told him to leave. The absolute hatred in his voice when he hissed, "You ruined my life." This wasn't just some family feud. This wasn't normal. Mia squeezed my hand. We need to do this. I nodded. Yeah, we do. The next few days passed in a weird, surreal blur. We filed the paperwork. A court date was set. And all the while, I braced myself for whatever Trevor would do next. I didn't have to wait long. Because 2 days later, my boss called me into his office. Ethan, he said, his expression tight. We need to talk. I felt my stomach twist. What's going on? He sighed, rubbing his temples. HR got an anonymous complaint about you. Someone's accusing you of financial misconduct, embezzling money, making fraudulent transactions. I blinked. What? I know it sounds ridiculous, he said quickly. But HR has to investigate. That means putting you on paid leave until this is cleared up. My pulse pounded in my ears. You know I didn't do anything. Of course I do, he said. But protocol is protocol. And just like that, I was being forced out of my own goddamn job. I didn't even need to guess who was behind it. Trevor. I clenched my fists, the sheer audacity of it sending a rush of anger through me. He had really gone this far? Mia was furious when I told her. That's it, she snapped. We are taking him down. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, we are. The next morning, I had Ms. Dawson send a cease and desist letter to Trevor. A formal warning. A legal document spelling out, in very clear terms, that if he kept this up, he'd be looking at a defamation lawsuit on top of the restraining order. I expected him to back off, to realize he'd pushed too far. But Trevor? He never knew when to quit. That night, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I ignored it. Then came another call. And another. By the fourth, Mia snatched my phone and answered. Who is this? A pause. Then Trevor's voice, low and venomous. You're making a mistake. Mia's eyes narrowed. The only mistake Ethan made was not cutting you off sooner. Trevor laughed short, humorless. You think a piece of paper is going to stop me? That was the last thing he said before Mia hung up and blocked the number. We didn't sleep much that night. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. 2 days before the court hearing, Trevor escalated. Again. Mia and I had just sat down for dinner when my phone buzzed with a notification. Your bank account has been locked due to suspicious activity. I frowned, my stomach twisting. I pulled up the app, 3 failed login attempts. Someone had tried to access my account. Ethan? Mia's voice was cautious, watching my expression shift from confusion to cold rage. It's him, I muttered, my jaw tightening. Trevor's trying to hack into my fucking bank account. Mia stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. That's it. We're calling Dawson. And we did. I sat on the couch, heart pounding as our lawyer listened. Then, with the calm efficiency of someone who had seen it all, she said, This is good. I blinked. Good. She hummed. It proves he's not just harassing you. He's actively trying to cause financial harm. This strengthens your case for the restraining order. Mia let out a sharp breath. So what do we do? Dawson's voice was firm. You show up to court, and you win. The day of the hearing, I felt wired, some mix of exhaustion, anger, and a simmering anxiety I couldn't shake. Trevor was already there when we arrived. He sat at the opposite end of the waiting area, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes met mine, there was something ugly in them. Something feral. Mom and Dad were with him. I hadn't spoken to them since the night of my wedding, but when my mother caught my eye, she gave me this pitiful, pleading look, like I was the one doing something cruel. Like I was breaking her heart. I looked away. The hearing was brutal. Our lawyer laid everything out, the harassment, the threats, the false HR report, the attempted bank hack. We had evidence. Proof. Every shitty, hateful email. The police report from when Trevor showed up at my house. The cease and desist letter he ignored. And Trevor? He sat there, arms folded, rolling his eyes like this was all some overreaction. When the judge asked if he had anything to say in his defense, Trevor scoffed. I was upset, he said, his tone dripping with entitlement. Ethan turned our family against me. He humiliated me. He threw his hands in the air. I just wanted him to feel what I felt. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge, in the most unimpressed voice I've ever heard, said, "So you admit to everything?" Trevor's mouth opened. Closed. Mom made a strangled noise from the back of the room. And just like that, the restraining order was granted. 2 full years. No contact. No coming near me or my home. Trevor lost. I should have felt triumphant. Victorious. But as I walked out of that courtroom, all I felt was tired. Trevor stormed past me, shoulder checking me hard. "You're dead to me," he hissed. I didn't even flinch. I just exhaled and said, "Good." The moment I walked out of that courtroom, it was like a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying finally lifted. Trevor was done. For 2 years, at least, he couldn't contact me. Couldn't show up at my house. Couldn't pull any more of his bullshit without serious legal consequences. But as I stepped into the fresh air, I still felt hollow. Mia slipped her hand into mine. "It's over," she murmured. I nodded. "Yeah, it is. Or at least, I thought it was. Because the fallout was immediate. I ignored the first few calls from my parents. But when my inbox flooded with messages from other relatives, I knew they weren't going to let this go quietly. One subject line read, "I can't believe you did this." Another, "Ethan, family is family." I didn't even have to open them to know what they said. Trevor had already started spinning the narrative, telling anyone who would listen that I had destroyed him, that I had cut him off for no reason, that I had torn the family apart. The same family that didn't even show up to his own birthday party. Mia sat beside me as I scrolled through the messages, her jaw tight. They don't get to do this. Not after everything. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temple. I know, but I also don't care. And that was the truth. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Didn't feel the need to justify my actions or try to make people understand. Trevor had done this to himself. I closed my laptop, blocked a few more numbers, and leaned back with a sigh. I think I'm actually done this time. Mia studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Good. For weeks after the hearing, I waited for the other shoe to drop. But it never did. Trevor was gone. And as time passed, something weird happened. I started to feel lighter. Work cleared me completely. I got my job back. My boss even joked about how my brother would make a terrible con man, considering how quickly HR saw through his bullshit. And my relationship with the rest of my family? It changed. My cousins, the ones who had chosen my wedding over Trevor's party, started reaching out more. They made it clear, without even saying it, that they were on my side. That they were done making excuses for my parents and Trevor, too. And my parents? I think they finally realized I wasn't coming back. Their messages slowed, then stopped, and I didn't miss them. Mia and I finally went on our honeymoon a few months later. One night, as we sat on the beach, watching the waves roll in, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "No regrets?" she asked softly. I thought about everything that had happened. Then I smiled. "None.